Hello and welcome. It's Thursday night, 7 o'clock. It must be Celebrity Spotlight. My name is Paul Endicott from Music Heritage London and the Swinging 60s Experience tours, and now the chats. Now we have the Thursday night Celebrity Spotlight. And tonight we have Derek Griffiths from the Artwoods. He's going to be coming on later. But I just wanted to update you as what's going on in London at the moment. Today we heard, was it today or yesterday, there's a new vaccine out. Pfizer promoted theirs a couple of days ago. Now, new Oxford vaccine. We have a new vaccine from Oxford University, and it's encouraging because it's meant to be much better for us older folk. And it's a lot cheaper as well, so that's good news. And we want to celebrate the anniversary of Chuck Berry being released from prison back in 1979. He was released this day in 1979. A little bit of income tax evasion. So anyway, a little bit more about that maybe later on. See if Derek has any fond memories of Chuck Berry or Mike Berry or any other berries that they have been, and there have been quite a few berries. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our special guest today, Derek Griffiths from the Artwoods. His friends call him Del Boy, so when you put some messages down, hopefully you'll be messaging us very shortly. You can call him Del Boy, I'm sure he won't mind. Hello, Derek Griffiths. Or
Hello
Del Boy.
there. Paul, how are you? Yeah, Del Boy's fine by me. Yeah,
Del Boy.
I can only ponder as to why they call me Del Boy, but it's less of a mouthful.
Let's put my comments on here at the moment. Let me see. Oh, here we're getting some show comments. Wishing you well from Sweden. So we're going to start getting some comments coming in shortly. Hello, Ulrika, and there's Ulrika again.
Wow.
Barry Gibbs.
Hello, Ulrika.
I think she thinks you're Barry Gibbs. So this is Derek Griffiths. Derek Griffiths from the Artwoods, and I'll give you a little bit of background as to who the Artwoods were. And I, living in West London, I've got to know all about the Artwoods. The guy that formed them back in 1962. His name was Art Wood, and he was the elder brother of Ronnie Wood from the Byrds and obviously from the Rolling Stones that he joined in the 70s. And it's fair to say that the Artwoods were a great live band and had a great following in West London, probably all over the UK as well. I'll ask you where you played, Del, later, and some of the locations that you played, but it's fair to say that the Artwoods didn't actually have the success, the commercial success that a lot of your peer groups did, other bands that were playing on Eel Pie Island, for example. But Art Wood was actually playing with one of our gods as far as the blues was concerned, Alexis Korner. He was in Alexis Korner's Blues Incorporated back in 1962, and then he formed the Artwoods in 1963. I'd say they were likened to the Animals at the time. So 64 to 67, the Artwoods were pretty active, and then you kind of split up. At what stage did you join the Artwoods?
I was a founder member. It was called the Artwood Combo when I first joined. So basically, it was the amalgamation of two bands. I was in a band called Red Bloods Bluesicians with John Lord, who was went on to be the keyboard player in Deep Purple. And John and I met. We were at a party in West Hampstead. We met, and the supremo of the Red Bloods Musicians was a guy called Don Wilson. He was a double bass player. Well, he turned to electric bass as well. And coming home one night, oh, that's right, I got a call that we were going to amalgamate with Artwood. We were called the Artwood Combo. And that was the lineup with Reg Dunnage on drums. But unfortunately, Don Wilson had an accident. He slammed into the back of a lorry on the North Circular. So he retired from the business, and that's when we got Malcolm Poole in, and it became a 5-piece lineup from about 64 onwards. And we worked, well, let's say 25 dates a month was plus. If we had 20 dates
going.
If we had 20 dates a month, we thought we were on a losing streak.
So we were working 20.
Oh God, yeah, we were working every night, sometimes twice a night. So we even three gigs, and we were doing lots of broadcasts. Plus, we were going abroad. We went to Denmark, Poland, France, Germany. Bands didn't travel as much then, unless you were club bands. We were all club bands. The Who, the Stones were a club band, you know, until they started having commercial success, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah. Let's just have a look at some of the comments coming in here. Right. Well, I've got to go back here. So we've got Ulrika from Sweden. Then we get, we've got hello from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hello, Las Vegas.
Teresa from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow.
Hello, Teresa. And then we
got to the airport there.
It's great that we can communicate here all over the world.
Yeah,
it's Belgium. We have Miriam. Hello, Miriam from Belgium. They're coming in from Manchester. Eileen from Manchester. Hello, Eileen. And
hello, Eileen.
South Africa here. Alan from South Africa. Nice to see you, Alan. Thanks for joining us. And we have a couple more. Monica from Sweden. Now, many of you on here may not have heard Artwood tracks. As I said, they were really popular as far as the local nightclub scene, or the local venue scene in West London, definitely. But I'm going to play you a little bit of what the Artwood sounded like. And this is one of my favourite Artwood tracks, and one that I play on the bus tours as well. So let me share my screen, and let's listen to some of this. Share screen. I've got to talk myself through this process here. Okay.
If you play some, you see, music's incredibly personal. Yeah. But at the same time, it's universal. I mean, because what you eventually produce is going to, hit a lot of people.
So there we go. There's a little bit of the Artwoods, but tell me a little bit about that. We spoke about that earlier, as to you weren't meant to be playing that, but your record label thought it would be something fitting for the band.
Yeah, record companies were trying to career make in those days, and they always tried to look for popular appeal. That was certainly not atypical of the set we did. But John grew up in a very broad household. His dad was a musician, as was mine. And I guess because of the time we grew up in, we also inherited a bit of a kind of ear for jazz. So although we're not jazz players, we felt quite, reasonably comfortable in that skin. We're certainly not jazz players, but we were an R&B band. But we ended up doing this album, and it was strange, the choice of material. I won't say any more than that, but it's quite that track. If you don't know, it's A Taste of Honey. It was big in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean. If you stick it with the video of people walking through scenes of London, it does sound very 60s, but we wouldn't do that in our club set.
No, I can imagine that being released as a single. It did epitomise the 60s, you know.
Well, actually, it was on an EP, but it was on an EP, not a single.
But it actually reached in the 20s in the UK charts, didn't it?
No, not that one. I think you're thinking of I Take What I Want.
Which
is
another one of my favourites.
Yeah, that's of course, Taste of Honey hasn't got art on it. There's no vocal. It's an instrumental. So, as I say, it was purely a little thing we did as a sideline.
Okay. So the Artwoods, 63, they really started motoring, or they became active in 64 up until 67.
That's right, end of 67.
Where did you travel to? How far away did you play? Because I knew that you were very big on Eel Pie Island and probably played a few times at the Ealing Club as well.
We were active all over the British Isles. I mean, sadly, we never got to Ireland, the Republic or Northern Ireland, which I would like to have done. I've been there subsequently in different outfits, but we had a particularly appreciative following in and around Derby, Nottingham, the Midlands, because we were classed as a mod band, and there was a real big mod population up in the Midlands. So we enjoyed some success there. But yeah, I mean, don't forget, travel was really difficult in the 60s. The motorway wasn't extended and vans were very slow. I mean, we used to do this gig in Llandudno, North Wales. And it used to take us about 12 hours to get there in an old comma. And it was the same for us all, John Mayall, and everybody was traveling around in these rickety old delivery vans, basically. But yeah, then we did lash out and buy a brand new Ford Transit, and we did start to go abroad then. Although our biggest tour abroad, we weren't in the van, we flew there. It was to Poland. We did a fortnight tour in Poland with Billy J. Kramer.
And the Dakotas.
And the Dakotas, yeah. And Elkie Brooks was on it. Who else was on it? Just us three, I think. And we traveled around Poland when it was still communist. That was 1964, 5. Yeah, I mean, it was a very successful tour, very successful, because they were starved of pop and blues music over there. So we did quite well.
I know with the Downliners sect, Don Crane's band, when he went over to the Eastern Bloc, he was mobbed because they had such a following in Eastern Europe in the 60s, and he never really, well, obviously the record sales would have dictated, would have shown them. But
well, I don't think they, to correct you on that, Paul, I'm not sure they could get their hands on records. It was done on radio stuff, radio plays. But yeah, we were mobbed. I was a bit too modest to say.
Did you have your clothes ripped off you, like the Beatles did?
Sadly, no.
Let's have a look at some of the questions we have here. Let's get off that. Hello, have we done this one already? Icky Palitza from Los Angeles here. Hi, Icky. Hello, Icky. Oh, there's an old mate of mine here, Richard Sawkins. Hi, Paul. We know each other, and I used to drink with Art and Angie in the Tide End pub, Teddington.
That's well,
our old mate then.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a few used to get in there, including oh God, the name's gone. Rick Parfitt
from Status Quo.
Status Quo. He lived opposite, I think.
Yeah, I was having a drink with Patty recently, and we actually had a drink at Shambles up the road, and I was having a sing-song with Morris, the blind piano player, in there. So Patty and I had a nice evening in there, in Shambles Wine Bar, Teddington High Street. Let's have a look. Hello from... let's have a look here. Have we got any questions while we're here? Have we got any questions for Del Boy? Hello from New Zealand. Colleen from New Zealand.
Beautiful.
And...
beautiful country. Not been to Oz.
I can't wait to get over there.
Made it to New. Yeah. I had a New Zealand girlfriend.
Oh well, we can come on to that later. I'm just seeing if we got any questions. Hi from Italy.
No, that's I had an Italian girlfriend.
Hi from Italy. Such a joy to hear you both talking in the language I love. You cannot get a better language than Italian. Come on, Mina, don't.
Buongiorno.
Mi viene da ridere. Che cosa fai?
Riccardo.
I could listen to Italian all night. Now I'm going to play another one of the Artwood tracks, and again one of my favourite ones that I play on the bus tours and the when we had the double-decker bus, the Route Master, when London was open for business. And this is one of my favourite tracks just coming up here. So the video unfortunately isn't fantastic, and I couldn't find any great videos of the Artwoods. And this actually isn't of the Artwoods. This is people dancing to your music at one of the gigs that you must have been playing live at. So let me share the screen and let's have a listen to this. Waiting for the bass.
I'm gonna pick you up now and carry you away, yes I am. So you better pack up now, baby. You're packing up today. Here I come, just a big bad man. When I walk away, baby.
Okay, so that is one of my favourite tracks from the Artwoods. That's the one that got to the 20s in the UK charts. 1965.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 6, I think.
66.
I'm not sure.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And who was playing bass then?
Malcolm Poole. He lives in Girvan in Scotland now. Malcolm was very underrated. In those days, bass players in bands didn't do a lot. The bass leapt forward as an instrument after the 60s and in the 70s. I mean, it's always been a hugely important instrument, don't get me wrong, but Malcolm was a pretty nifty bass player. Loads of bass players used a pick back in those days, but he used his fingers. Yeah, and I mean, I listen to that now. Equipment's better, and you can hear the bass more. I realise that Malcolm was really pivotal to the band. He drove it along.
And of course, the mellifluous voice of Artwood there, who unfortunately left us 14 years ago now, would you believe? Yeah,
I miss him. Yeah, he was a great humorist, absolutely nuts, and I miss his humour and his persona. And we lived quite near to each other as well.
So you saw a lot of him?
Yeah, off and on. Yeah, we never got to play together. Well, we did once or twice, but there was always a sort of plan that got pushed to the back burner to get another hit of the band together. In fact, I spoke to John Lord about it, and he was up for it because he was sort of post Deep Purple, and yeah, we talked about it, but it never came to anything.
So we're getting people from Paolo, che finti, Paolo. See, you never knew that I could speak Maltese. Paolo Sherry. So we've got, my mother was Maltese, so I learned how to speak the language. My grandmother. It's trying to place John Lord, because he went on to form Deep Purple in '66.
No.
67.
Well, when the band disbanded virtually, and that's when we all went our separate ways. He went on in '67, and it wasn't going to. Well, I won't go into details. It's quite a long, convoluted story that led to Deep Purple. It was going to be called something else, and it was formed by somebody else. But lots of bands in their formative period, there's a shakedown period where they kind of you're looking for a way in. People get dropped, people get booked, management changes, agency changes, all that kind of thing. And also, of course, you're trying to find a musical policy. And then they had I think their big breakthrough was Smoke on the Water, wasn't it? Because they discovered that heavy riffing thing, and they were the sort of, them and Led Zeppelin were the sort of set the cornerstones of the heavy metal movement.
Which were veering. They really got popular in the late '60s. That's when Genesis came out, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and a lot of them played actually again on Eel Pie Island in the second club that they had on Eel Pie Island, Colonel Barefoot's Rock Garden.
Yes, quite. I don't really know much about that. It didn't really. I never ever wanted to. Yeah, I don't know. I was too busy. I was too busy to be bothered with that. It was just a kind of hippie thing. I love hippies, but I love the whole hippie movement. But it was just that it passed me by.
It did become a hippie commune in 1969, 1970, and that's why the Eel Pie Island Hotel burnt down in '71, whenever it was.
Yeah, I prefer to remember. I prefer to remember it in its heyday.
And talking about heydays and some great venues that you've played, 15 years ago you played a really fantastic gig down in a private house in Petersham, just outside Richmond, if I remember right.
Oh, now you're talking. Only the creme de la creme gets to play there.
It was my 50th.
Paul, happy birthday.
It was my 50th birthday. I had the pleasure. We have a mutual friend called Chris, and he put the band together, and he was phoning me up saying, "Oh, I've got a problem. My guitarist can't make it. Then his bass player couldn't make it." So we ended up having Del Boy that played with the Artwoods back in the 60s, and apparently the bass player played with the Pasadena Roof Orchestra or something, which unbeknownst
No, he played with Acker Bill.
Oh, was it
Acker Bill?
Ah,
yeah.
Well, it must have been another. So what a fantastic evening, and it was only
it was
4 years ago when we met up again, and you were saying to me, "What? I've seen you, so I know you from somewhere," and we were trying to remember where we met each other. Anyway, enough about me. Derek Charles Griffiths, born 23rd of June 1944. If you don't mind me, well, I've said it now. I've said it. You can slap me across the face for saying it next time you see me. So
that's all right. I don't care.
What got you into music? What was the inspiration? What was the tipping point? How old were you?
Well, I guess I was lucky. My dad was a dance band guitar player, semi-pro, and a crooner, would you believe? And so I grew up sort of listening to Bing Crosby and stuff like that. But there was always a guitar propped up in the corner, and when rock and roll kicked in '56, I started to make tentative movements towards it and try and pick out the odd tune, learn the odd chord. Excuse me. And then it was earth-shattering, the stuff that was coming out on radio. I didn't have a record player, but we had this thing called Radio Luxembourg, which was a commercial channel beamed from Luxembourg because they could play adverts, they could choose their own records, and they weren't subject to BBC playlists. And so I started to hear like Buddy Holly and all the stuff at the time. Strangely enough, it was quite, you ask a lot of guitar players, the earth-shattering intro that made us all prick our ears was on, I think it was Cliff Richard's first record, Move It. And to this day, I think it's a dynamite intro. Not, I hasten to add, played by Hank Marvin. I'm led to believe it was played by the composer Ian Samwell. But that was British rock and roll was really a bit thin on the ground. Another record that changed people's ears a bit later in '60 was Shaking All Over by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, on which my great friend Clem Catini played the drums.
Who's played on 40 number one hits or something?
Yeah, a bit more than that, but what's a few hits between friends? And I've got to put the record straight. The guitar player on that was not Mick Green, much as I love Mick Green. In fact, I went to Poland with him. I was in awe of Mick Green. But he did not play on Shaking All Over. It was Joe Moretti, who was an Italian. Hey, let's hear it for Italy.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Un guitarista fantastico. Una guitarista. It's the gender thing. We don't have it in English.
Richard Sawkins, did Derek ever session with the Stones?
Did I session with the Stones? No, but I sessioned with Chuck Berry, and the Stones were all in the studio, eating their heart. No, they were all in the control room, and I was out on the studio floor playing with Chuck Berry, which was a strangely odd experience, which I could embellish if you wanted me to, but for now, let's say it was very strange. I arrived in the studio, and there was this little figure sitting in the corner. Well, he wasn't that little, and it was the man himself writing his lyrics out. And I think he's one of the greatest lyric writers of the 20th century. So, did I session with the Stones? No, but I met them. I mean, I know Ronnie very well.
Well, that's what Richard was just asking. He obviously knows Ronnie.
Yeah, well, I knew the Wood family because Ronnie was living with his mum and dad at the time. Art had moved out. He was the older brother. Ted had moved out. He was the middle brother. And John Lord, who we mentioned earlier, he was lodging there. So I used to go pick John up, or no, drop him off after a gig. And we'd sit up till all hours just chewing the fat and doing silly things.
Well,
with a young Ron who'd come back from his gig with the Birds.
And how old was Ron then? Late teenage?
Ron was about, I suppose, a couple of years younger than us all. Art was oldest. Art was in his 20s, mid-20s, and it seemed quite, a venerable age then. It's funny how age is 5 years now makes absolutely no difference whatsoever, but then it did.
It was the difference between go away, go and play, Oh no, I remember. I had two elder brothers. I still have two elder brothers, and I remember, and one's 5 years old and one's 7 years old, as you can imagine. Mother would say, take the little one out with your mates, and of course, it's the last thing they wanted. We've got a question here from Melanie Joy. Derek, I haven't seen you for about 54 years, but I'd still recognise you anywhere. Great to see you, Melanie Joy. Well,
Melanie, where did we meet?
I will.
54 years, so that would be, blimey. What's 54 from 20? Oh, 50 from 20 is 1966.
There we go. We've got somebody else here, Nidal from Syria, listening to us.
Hello, Nidal.
And Charles D from Tamilin Charles from India. So,
wow. That's always wanted to go to India.
So we're looking at seeing if we've got any more questions here other than haven't seen you in 54 years. Okay. So who were your inspiration when you were learning to play music? You mentioned some of the bands that came over or that you heard from America. Jailhouse Rock must have been a big thing. Elvis was big in the late 50s. And he really transcended from the crooners that we remember as kids. We didn't really get into the crooning, although we accepted it and liked it. That was our parents' music. Who were the other inspiration for you from the States and from the UK?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head there, Paul, because the Sun record period of Presley, Elvis, with Scotty Moore and guys, was the period I enjoyed most. I kind of had to pass on dear old Elvis when he got into the whole Colonel Parker Hollywood phase. But when he was a young, horny-looking guy bringing virtually black music to a white audience, that mustn't be overlooked, the importance, because the kids were all sloping off and listening to race records in their parents' cars, but the black segregation thing was big in America in the 50s. And suddenly along comes this beautifully mannered, beautiful looking guy
singing
who
black
sang
music.
singing black music, and it unified, you know, the two parts. And so we must always acknowledge Elvis for that. Buddy Holly, I always thought was an incredibly original guitar player. I loved Scotty Moore, as I've already said. I loved James Burton, who was also, you know, he played on Ricky Nelson's records and some of Presley's stuff in later years. And I love Booker T and the MGs, you know. I liked, I've forgotten his name. What's his name? Oh, crikey. It was, I wasn't really influenced much by English music. I guess pretty much every English guitar player has to say Hank Marvin, because Hank was very, very original, and he had a very original sound, and he was very accurate and musical. He never made a mistake. He had lots and lots of front to get out there night after night and play those melodies faultlessly. And of course, we mustn't overlook Bruce Welch. He reinvented the rhythm guitar. You know, his picking guitar was great. So yeah, the Shadows were important.
Well,
Does that sort of answer it?
You've just stolen my next question, because we were talking about your, you know, the gurus from America, and I'd like to add that actually it was Cyril Davies, etc., and some of the guys from the Ealing Club, Chris Barber, etc. They used to go over to America, and they used to make themselves known to the black blues singers and jazz and blues singers, and in many cases brought them over to the UK, knowing full well that they weren't getting much airtime in America. So they thought, guys, you're going to be fab. And I mean, that's exactly how Jimi Hendrix started. You know, this is Rod Harrod got him his first gig at the Scotch of St James. You know,
that's right.
And,
yeah.
You know, it was a wow, this black guy playing mean guitar like nobody had ever heard over here.
Yeah, the thing about Jimi Hendrix is he paid his dues. He'd been around the block way before. He didn't suddenly become stratospherical overnight. I was in the outback in Australia and playing with a guy called Billy Thornton, the Aztec, so big out there. Billy's sadly no longer with us, but this guy invited me back, and we sat and listened to records, and he was a Hendrix freak, and he played me all stuff when he'd been with the Isley Brothers and things like that. And he was a good backing guitar player, Hendrix. He knew his chops, and it was, you know, but he had hidden there all this originality. And the originality in his songwriting, he never recognized his own voice. Yeah. He hated his own voice, but you can hear that Dylan-esque quality, that throwaway delivery in his voice, which I loved. And it was a perfect counterweight to that stinging, incisive guitar playing. Yeah, okay, so that's Hendrix. I mean, brilliant player. Before that, you mentioned somebody. Oh, Steve Cropper, by the way. I'd feel terrible if I got away without saying. He was a guitar player on Green Onions. You know, he was a guitar player with Booker T. And Steve Cropper. I didn't even know he was white when I first heard him. I thought he was a black player. But that guitar solo on Green Onions, it's so hackneyed now. But when it came out, wow, it made the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
I'm just having a look at some other questions here while we're talking. Oh, there's somebody sending a message to Ulrika, just interested in what part of Sweden you're from. This is a dating site as well. Did you know that, Del? I mean,
yeah,
we're really onto something.
That's
here.
Really, yeah. We did Denmark. We were okay in Denmark. We didn't get to Sweden, but we did 2 or 3 tours of Denmark. It was it was a good time for us. I love Denmark. Oh, shouldn't say that in front of Swedish people.
Hey, listen, we're one nation. It's one race, the human race, as far as I'm concerned. It's
Absolutely.
the thing that I, having got to know a lot of the musicians from the '60s, it became very apparent to me very early on that everyone used to dep for each other. It was a friendship group almost. There was no animosity in the bands. You'd get a call because there's no mobile phones at the time. It would be all landlines. I can't make the gig, or our drummer's ill. Can you dep? And the first band that was playing at the Station Hotel where the Rolling Stones started down in Richmond was Dave Hunt's blues band. And little did I know until I realised it was another Giorgio Gomolski managed band. And the Dave Hunt blues band had Ray Davies playing guitar for them before he went to form the Kinks. But little did I know that Charlie Watts used to dep for them a lot. And Charlie Watts must have played in so many bands before he eventually got to play with the Stones in Richmond. The first night was in January 1963, playing at the church hall down in a very narrow road in Richmond between the cinema and what was the L'Auberge. Sandover Hall, it's called. Now,
Oh yeah.
very few people know that the Stones played there 6 times, 3 times in 1962 and 3 times in January 63. And the first time, I think it was the 14th of January 1963, is when they played with the lineup of Charlie Watts and Bill Wyman before they ever played. And then obviously it went on to the Station Hotel where they got their first residency on the 24th of February. Did you see them at all? Obviously, this was before you started with the Artwoods. Did you go down to the Station Hotel at all? Remember going to see them either there or?
I
or
did,
the
yeah.
Ilford
I went there with my. No, I never went to Ilford Island as a spectator. It was always to play.
Right.
But yes, I did go to the Station Hotel before I got into. Well, I was playing, but only in amateur bands, and I went with my first girlfriend, and it was packed, and there was this sort of band on stage, which I later realised was the Stones. Just to go back to your previous point about mixed musicians with different bands, I think you may be aware that Charlie Watts played with Alexis Korner's Blues Incorporated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he was in it at the same time as Art Wood.
Yeah.
Arthur Wood.
And that's also going to be probably at the Ealing Club, which is where Brian Jones met up with the boys, because Brian Jones was with Alexis Korner as well.
Yeah, I mean, they used to come down and watch Blues Incorporated. There's a story about Mick Jagger, but it's unsubstantiated, so I'm not going to repeat it. But it's to do with asking Cyril Davies a question. But it's one of those urban myths. I don't think I should repeat it because it's not rude or anything. It's just that he was very inquisitive and wanted to know how Cyril got this sound, you see.
Well, maybe that's for the next time that we play. Is it after the Watershed? We got a question here, Del, from Melanie
No, it's not
Joy.
after the Watershed.
Oh no, it's,
Yeah.
oh
Melanie,
that's the
yeah.
one. No, hang on. There was another question here. What's your favourite song to play from Daisy Hay?
Oh God, ever.
It's a very
crikey.
So
Well, I suppose
your go-to
loads-
song.
Oh, well, Daisy, I'd love to give you a definitive answer. You'll have to forgive me here because I've been playing a long time and in different I mean, after the Artwoods, I had to do session work. Well, I hadn't have to do it, but I became a session player and did loads of stuff from West End musicals right through to, hillbilly, hit rock and roll and R&B, bit of this, bit of that, backing people. it's impossible to say. There's so much beautiful music about. I bet you if you ask a lot of improvising musicians, they would say they enjoy playing on a 12-bar blues and just reaching out with other good musicians, and so you're all firing off each other.
Absolutely, and it also depends on where you're playing as well, what the atmosphere's like. So you can't go and play, what's your favourite song to play, depends who you're playing it to. So if you're around a campfire, you may pick up on a 12-bar blues, but if you're playing at a party atmosphere, you're not going to play 12-bar blues. But if somebody shoved a guitar in your hand and in a dinner party environment, what would be your go-to song to play? Or and do you sing as well?
I sing backups, yeah. I have sung, but not. It's not my forte. I pretty much every band I've been in, I've sung backups. Well, I guess to answer your question, it would have to be something that I feel people could join in on. So it'd be something like, maybe, I don't know, maybe something very simple. I'll think of something before you go. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll park that. One
Stand By Me, something like Stand By Me, because that goes on forever and everyone knows it,
And they can sing along to it.
Stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great song, but like you alluded to, Paul, you can murder that song. So from a stage point of view, if you're playing with a really great singer, it can be beautiful, but it can also be murdered.
Yeah, no.
By the way, that's the song that we always used to call that the horse's eyes song. You know the way horses look sideways when they're frightened? Well, musicians do that when they're not knowing where it's going to end, and you're looking, someone's got to give the cue, for goodness sake, But if the singer doesn't do that, somebody has to step forward and go, ah!
Well, isn't it like the music shops? Is it like the music shops now? There's a poster in the window saying "No Stairway to Heaven allowed to be played in here." I mean, there are songs
Absolutely.
where you go, "Oh no," but
I used to hate guitar shops.
Yeah, well, talking about guitar shops, the guitar shop in Richmond. You know who I'm going to say now. The one and only guitar shop in Richmond, Jerry Potter's guitar shop. Was it Jerry Potter? It was the go-to place for all the band members from the bands that played on Eel Island or Richmond in the 60s, because he imported a lot of the blues from America, and it was the go-to place if they wanted the latest Muddy Water or the B.B. King or whatever, or Chuck Berry. You'd go to Potter's because you'd know that he'd probably got it in there. And the fact that 2 doors away from Potter's was the Ivy shop, where you'd get the best bit of schmutter, the best Ivy League clothes from America. So you'd bump into Rod the Mod in there, Rod Stewart from up in Archway Road, shopping in Richmond because he's playing on Eel Island with the steam packet that night. It was just an amazing blimey, it was a melting pot of all these musicians and the fans that were starting to get behind them now. These bands were starting to get momentum. The Richmond Jazz and Blues Festival, which is one of the locations we show on our Birth of the Rolling Stones tour. It was a place where the Stones were asked to come along to play there in '63, just after they started at the Crawdaddy Club, the Station Hotel and Athletics Ground. But 2,000 fans turned up. Bearing in mind they only had 3 people in the audience on the 24th of February 1963, suddenly to have 2,000 people coming to watch them as the bottom of the list was quite incredible. And the same thing happened with the fans. They were starting to listen to them more and more, which is why they moved the venue, the Crawdaddy Club venue, moved to the Athletics Ground. And you must have played at the Athletics Ground, or certainly Dept or whatever, you know, the second Crawdaddy club at the athletics ground.
Yeah, I played there, yeah. Yeah. Going back on something you said earlier about the black music renaissance in Britain, when they started to come over. Somebody brought Little Walter over, who's a renowned harmonica player and singer. We had the good fortune to back him. And you're absolutely right. I mean, these guys have been languishing in, you know, car washes.
Absolutely.
And they couldn't believe their luck that the Brits had suddenly rediscovered the blues.
Yeah.
And they were getting a second wind.
Yeah.
And very interesting for a bunch of white boys to be backing a guy from the South, you know, harmonica player.
Well, I remember.
And there was no discipline. Go on.
It was a bit of a lag. I remember one of the first black bands or groups that played the Cromwellian, the Crom, were the Drifters.
Yeah.
And the Drifters came over from the States. They didn't really have a massive following. 63, 64, they're playing at the Crom, not a massive club, but the people in the club were really influential. You know, you had royalty in there. You had, you know, ballet dancers from the Royal Ballet dance companies. You had actors. You had socialites. And when they heard the brilliant music, then it snowballed very, very quickly. Again, without the aid of, you know, social media and all the communications we've got. So it was an explosive time. We could go on and on and on about talking about the tipping points of the 60s and why, you know, fashion and music became so important in the 60s. But I think for the moment, Del, I'm going to bring this fantastic chat to order. We're coming up to, what are we coming up to? 52. I want to try and keep within the hour because of recording times, etc., and things where we can post. I'm going to see if they've got any more. What's this? Bowl or vape? Richard Sawkins, have you been drinking? Universal language. What's this one here? Ian, universal language. Live, laugh and love. Okay, any more questions? Does anyone have any questions for Del Boy before we close the show? Any more questions? We've still got 92 people on from many places. It's coming up to 8 o'clock here in London. Any more questions? Going once. Thank you so much for responding to me, says Daisy. Do you miss live gigs, says Richard. I think somebody else was asking that as well.
Yeah, well, with COVID, it's awful. I mean, I live in a house full of musicians. My son's a musician. He's a piano player, plays with some quite important people. And, you know, in 2 days, he had a year's worth of work cancelled. And so, yeah, it's hit hard. And the trouble with, I'm going to do a little bit of a political blast here. Trouble with being a musician is people don't ever take it seriously. You know, they talk about people becoming redundant, but they're always talking about, I mean, if you think about it, musicians are being made redundant all the time because bands end, bands finish, shows close, same as actors, but they don't get the support as self-employed people that people do who are in employment, who should be supported. I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but please give some thought to the arts as well.
Yeah, I know that we've got a lot of music aficionados on here tonight that would certainly back that statement up. And it's not, you know, entertainment in general, whether it's, you know, I heard in Leicester Square that the street performers, you know, they've been basically they can't perform anywhere now, and I know of many acts, performing acts that started in Leicester Square. They came over from their indigenous countries in however long ago, and that's the first place they went to perform. People can't perform there, and you would have thought social distancing would be quite easy there. So we've got Elizabeth Evangelista. I know she comes from Pennsylvania, I think, over in the States or that way. And we also have
very topical.
Yeah, Laura. Thanks, Derek. Very interesting from Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Love the Jazz in Jeans title of your EP from Ronnie Gerard.
We were a bit dubious, but thanks, Ronnie. I really appreciate that.
And I've got to ask you one quick question before I say goodnight to you, Del Boy. Now, you played at my 50th birthday party, and I'm going to ask you another favour. We do tours at the
What's
weekend.
that, mate?
I'm going to ask you whether you want to join us on our. We're doing a Birth of the Rolling Stones tour at 3 p.m. on Sunday, this coming Sunday, where we start off in Richmond, end up in Twickenham at Eel Pie Island. And I would love you to
it's
join.
not on the back.
Not on my back now.
No, it's not. It's not on the back of that old Lambretta, is it?
I don't think you'd fit anymore. I think you'd fall off. No helmets either. No, it's Zoom.
I beg your pardon. All right, mate. Yeah, I understand. I'm a Zoomer.
So if you're a Zoomer, hopefully you can join me. We'll hopefully have some people on the tour with us. If anyone that's on the show tonight, on the Celebrity Spotlight tonight, if you want to get closer up and personal with Del Boy on Sunday at 3 o'clock, please join our tour, and you can sit next to him on a Zoom meeting. So
steady on, Paul.
Hey, we'll be getting you married off soon. No, we can't do that. You're married already, aren't you?
Well,
Del, it's been a pleasure, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on this. You know, we're going to be starting these every Thursday, and I think it's great that you spread the word and tell us the inspiration of you guys back in the 60s. What gave you inspiration? Because there's no doubt in my mind the kids of today are going to need some inspiration from somewhere to get through the mess that this planet's on at the moment, or in at the moment. And likewise, when you go back to the 50s and 60s and the post-war austerity, we need a lot of guts, we need a lot of get up and go to make something of ourselves then. In the days of austerity, we had a bit more money in our pockets then than we will do now for some years to come. But having the inspiration from the guys that made something of themselves in the 60s and still going on today, you know, the music of the 60s will transcend many, many generations to come, and you're part of it. So thank you so much for joining me, Del, and look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
Just like to say thank you very much for hosting the show, and to all you people out there who've taken the trouble to log in, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks, Del. You take care. We'll speak soon. Well, there we go, ladies and gents. That was Derek Griffiths from the Artwoods, and he's coming on the tour, the online live online tour, Birth of the Rolling Stones. It's an hour long. It usually goes on for about an hour and a half because there's so many questions to answer. But we take you from where the Stones started playing in 62 and 63, before they started their tour when Come On came out, and look forward to seeing Del again on Sunday. We've got a little banner that I'm going to show. If you want to get tickets for the tour on Sunday, there's the website. You can see going down the bottom. Let me take that off. So www.60sbus.london. Please join us. We have people coming on from all over the world. It's really great fun. We play live music, unlike tonight that we didn't play too much music. There's a reason for that because of the limitations from Facebook, unfortunately. Thanks for joining us, and I'll bid you a farewell. See you on Sunday. Take care out there.